Hi, thank you for coming. We are having our presentation today on prescribed burns. So it's just a basic presentation, not anything particular nothing in particularly scientific, but it does have some good information if you have very minimal knowledge of what prescribed burns are and what they do. So we are going to jump right in. Um, Prescribed burns are when fire is used to renew the natural environment. It arguably would happen organically in the past. The prairies would start on fire, perhaps lightning would strike. It was just bound to happen, is what was argued. Maybe natives would have campfires that would get out of hand. But it is suggested that it must have happened in the past, just because some seeds are actually opened with heat and with fire. So there is a reason to believe that it was a natural happenstance that would occur in the past organically. So it is believed to be beneficial in that it can reduce or eradicate any plants that might be overreaching, making other life less sustainable. It can also replenish nutrients in the soil and spark fresh seeding. Generally, some land is left as a type of refuge in the ecosystem, meaning that not all of the natural environment is burned at once. Of course, that being said, depending upon the makeup of the environment, many acres can be done at one time. I know I was at a state park in western Minnesota, and they had just done a burn, and it was a stunning prairie land. I think it was just south of maybe like the Morris area, but it was just it was beautiful. These rolling hills because of the glacial landscape that had occurred in that area. But it was very amazing to see just how much of it they burned at one time. Um, that was definitely something that I will remember. I got pictures also, but it was very cool. So they did a lot in, if not one fell swoop, in one area. So the land is prepared in advance of the burn. This means that any leaning trees may be felled to keep the fire low on the ground. Leaves and other flammable debris can also be raked away from trees to slow the fire, ensuring that the trees stay safe. A line around the perimeter of the burn area is also laid out. It can be raked. Fresh dirt may also be applied to maintain the line, but doing so may actually be detrimental to the ecosystem. This is more common in wildfires, but still only if necessary would you want to have that effect. It is, we try to leave no trace, and so obviously stirring up dirt can kind of mess up the bug ecosystems, their homes and their cycles, and it can also, you know, release more gases into the atmosphere. It can mess up root systems. So they try and keep it pretty low key on that. Try to leave the dirt in place. But sometimes in wildfires, obviously you don't really have a choice. If the fire is coming, you want to, save as much as you can and try and stop that fire from spreading. So then you really do need to take those extra steps. So that's I I did attend a fire training, and so that is what they did indicate in those circumstances. So water can also be applied to the perimeter, and then grasses or other plants can be tamped down to keep oxygen levels and flammability low. A plan must be submitted to the appropriate officials and okayed by a fire marshal. A fire marshal must also be on site throughout the burn. The day of the burn should ideally be a few days before a rainfall, and there should be low levels of wind. Humidity also factors in, as the fire does need to spread across the entire area. Weather is a big part in it, as well as when you apply chemicals. You want to be conscientious of it and recognize when it is safe and when it might not be. Any wind should be blowing in a way that the fire is blown into the area needing to be burned. If the wind is working against the fire and may be too strong, the fire may not actually burn the entire area that needs burning. So, um, again, that is part of the weather element. So being mindful of that, very important. Firefighters should be ready at the sides of the fire to put out any sparks that may find fuel beyond the intended perimeter of the fire. So, and that obviously, if you don't have enough firefighters, in order to keep the area and the burn safe, they probably won't pursue it. But you do want to have a number of people on and ready with the appropriate tools. And we will look at the tools on another slide here. But they can stay at the sides. You might have one or two people burning, and that will I'll show you the tools. For that also in this presentation. You might have one or two folks burning if you are on a time frame, if the humidity is going to spike or, if the wind is going to pick up, you might be on a time frame. And so you need to get the burn done. So they might have a few patches, a few people going back and forth. But just being mindful that you do want to recognize and respect the dangers of fire and having it at your back. Of course, firefighters, they do have appropriate equipment, and that is another element that will be discussed on a further slide. But they do have boots to protect against the burnt areas. The black is what they call that when the fire has already passed through. They call that the black, and that is the safe area. Um, and that I think is also on a future slide. But having the fires at your back can be a potential concern, but being mindful of it and having that space in between does make a difference. And of course, depending on the environment too, it might be pretty low risk if it's just, like prairie grasses, if there's not a lot of wind, if the fire is going pretty slow, which would explain why you're behind on the timetable in the first place, and why you would need two people igniting the burn. Then that's also, of course, another factor that you would want to take into consideration for if you do think it would be safe or not to have two people starting that fire, starting that burn. So, um, yeah, but you do want to have enough people to keep it safe, and that means having a lot of people on the perimeter and able to step in if needed. Um, the perimeter, of course, is marked by that line, um, that water line, that wet line, or just the prep of the raking the leaves out of the way. Um, and so having people there with their tools to stop any embers from spreading beyond that perimeter, that is one of the primary concerns. The fires are generally lit with a drip torch, which lights fuel that is simultaneously poured on the ground, where it ignites any materials available. And there will be some photos. They're pretty cool equipment. Generally, prescribed burns can be they're kind of cool. They're interesting just because they're not everyone has the opportunity to pursue them, to um, um, be a firefighter necessarily. And so it is a very enriching experience. It's one that you again um, will probably remember, or ideally would want to tell the grandkids. So it's something that's unique and kind of cool fire is one of those elements. So anyway, sky burns generally happen during the spring or fall as things are drying out and browning. Green plants won't light so readily. The soils and seeds would also not be able to replenish the earth mid-growing season as easily. So you do want to do in the spring, not when it's too wet, but late spring, early fall, or maybe even late fall, to do the most good with it to have the fires be the most effective. So, and that's kind of the prime time fire wildfire times as well, is when the plants are drying out and um, can spread easily. So the fires are kept relatively low and under control at all times. They also burn out relatively quickly unless a tree or dead log lights. Firefighters watch the perimeter for much of the fire while one or two individuals light the site. After we kind of talked about that already. After all firefighters line up and search the area for hotspots and such or smokes. So they burn it, everything turns to black. That the fuel has already been burnt up. There might be a tree or a log that does ignite, and those can smoke for long periods of time. So that's an example of where you might find a smoke. If there is fuel underneath some of that black, that can smoke as well. And so that's kind of what you are looking for when you are just checking the scene after the fire has burned out. Um, so that's how they do it. They look for hotspots if something might reignite, if something blows into that area, if that could ignite. They want to make sure that that doesn't happen because obviously it's a prescribed burn, it's a controlled burn, and so you want to make sure that you keep that under control. And smokes indicate that burning is still active, like we just said. These smokes are then extinguished. Not all burning areas are put out so readily, though, so the fire marshal on duty will stay until they deem that there is no chance of anything reigniting whatsoever. This may be a few nights and days if the extinguishing is needed. So, um, they will stay. I know the burns don't always take the most time depending on the surface area. I've been to just a very small amount, just two or so, and so the amount of time does depend on the wind. It depends. There are, a few factors. When you get started, when you get all your equipment into place, if it's more rustic, more rural, that takes more time. But obviously, as a part of the fire plan, which I believe is actually on a slide that's coming up. So it does take coordination, quite a bit of coordination to make sure everything goes off according to plan. So, um, those smokes are important to put out. You have your time frame, you have the person there who's checking. Obviously, your team checks it over, they get as much as they can. The person in charge, the fire marshal, will be there and will watch it, ensure that nothing more ignites and it doesn't cause more damage than anticipated. And then they'll say you can check again as a team consistently, a couple days in, especially if it's a large area, to ensure that there are no more smokes. And then you can put them out. Again, um, it is dependent upon just how much fuel is on the ground to the wind, weather conditions. That's why you might want to coordinate the plan for when there is a rain coming up. Tools. These are some firefighting tools, wildland firefighting. This is a shovel, so you can shovel dirt and get that onto, anything that's burning. A flapper. This is a rubber flapper, and this actually does work well also to smother any flames because it reduces the amount of oxygen that touches the plants and it'll take care of those exceptionally well um, underneath this. And it's flexible. That's a flexible piece of rubber also, which is why it's called a flapper. Um, and so um, you can also, kind of smack. That's probably a poor verbiage. You can kind of smack um those smokes, those flaming bits, and also knock the fuel apart, and so that way whatever's burning, it has less to grow on and into. So this is a McLeod, and it's got the rake element, and it's also got um, a flat element on the back. It's two-sided. There you can sharpen that backside, so you can also use that to hack at things if there is a log or something that you want to break into to keep the fire from spreading. That can help. It's got it's relatively wide from side to side, and so you have that surface area. This can also be used like as a rake to prep a fire site if you are getting the leaves out of the way, um, out from the sides of a tree trunk, just a few feet out. But you can also use a traditional rake too, especially if that's not like day of. I mean, using your McLeod could save resources if you don't want to bring a whole bunch of rakes and then bring a whole bunch of fire stuff. So it does work out. I liked this one. I also like the flapper too for the prescribed burn that I was on that I the prescribed burns that I participated in. So this one is a Pulaski. So this is actually it's got a sharp point, almost like an axe here, and then it's also got um, a hacking element on the back. It's kind of like a hammer, a war hammer. Uh, and some people really, really like this tool. I really like the McLeod and the Flapper, but this one people like. Um, but I didn't thwack at a lot of things per se. And I liked the surface area of the McLeod. But water trucks are also essential. Sprayers, you can have back sprayers, so you can load those up with water and then you can spray using the hoses. Water is essential for safety. These are also the tools. This is the drip torch. So it's got this little loop. I think that is for safety to keep the fuel from just all, coming out quickly because it's got that element to slow it down. And then this is actually lit on fire, this bit, and then you just pour the fuel out, it catches on fire, and then it drips onto the ground, and then the ground sparks and it flames up. So then you have your burn. And this is just a fuel tank. Um, I just liked the vibes from it. I thought it was rustic chic. So, but it's cool. It's cool to see all the different elements because otherwise you might, think, well, how should I transport this? What's best practices in way of these things? And this is one option. So you know what to look for if you're preparing for a prescriber and you don't have the tools, hey, that you can use something like that for the fuel. So PPE, you have the fireproof pants and shirts. Nomex, I think, is what they call those. Underclothes, cotton only. Other materials that have plastics can melt onto the person, causing more damage. Cotton generally can just burn away, which is safer for the firefighter. Bandanas for smoke regulation. Obviously, there is a good deal of smoke, especially depending on, the amount of acreage that you're dealing with. But you just want to be mindful of that and be able to protect yourself by covering your mouth. And a bandana, a cotton bandana, of course, can help with that. Safety goggles or safety glasses. You have your gloves that you want those to be thick and durable, like a leather, just to protect your hands. You want good materials. Boots, they have special certification boots that can handle um, the heat. They have fireproof-esque type boots that are for sale. And there are different kinds too. There can be nice leather boots. There can be big work boot types. So you can check that stuff out online. Helmets. Um, uh, those you can we just use the ones that we used at any site, like to take down trees, chainsaw helmets, like construction type helmets. So, um, and then you have generally have a bag with water bottles, emergency fire shelter. If things get out of hand, you are meant to go into a fire shelter to protect yourself. Prescribed burns. Okay, I should say if there this is a worst case scenario, the emergency fire shelter, if there is no chance and there's no possibility of getting out of the way of the fire, then you would want to go into your emergency fire shelter. But that, there are factors like which way the fire is blowing, and I'm very much new to this arena of study, and so I'm just giving you the information of what I learned on the very few fires that I participated in. I would love to learn more. It's a very cool area of study and a great way to be productive and helpful to the environment and to people. Like if fires get out of hand, like they do in California and, across the United States, across the world, you'd want to be able to help in that scenario. And so firefighting can help. So this is the sign that we put out as a warning to anybody who might frequent that area. Um, a lot of smoke like that can scare people if they don't know what's going on. And so having that posted is beneficial just for communications. Hey, we're having a prescribed burn. This area is not on fire, um, in a way that we don't want it to be. No one is at risk here, or minimal risk, arguably. So, just communicating what's going on. That's best practices. This is a prescribed burn at a prairie land. So you can see it's flat. It's got this perimeter here. And this is a water truck. This truck, but it's a four-wheeler. We've got the water here and the hose there. And this was actually driven around the perimeter before the burn started, and they wetted down the grass along this perimeter, just so, and that was the line that they were drawing. They used this. It was fairly basic. And then these tanks could be refilled with a larger water tank that was, a little farther off from the site. So, but this is an example. You can see the photos. This is one line. This one was burning kind of slow, which is why you have black on both sides. As you can see, it's just going all the way across here. And um, you can see it's a few acres here. So this one was meant to show the size of the site and the four-wheeler. This one is just showing the effectiveness of that water line. It is um, very marked, the difference. This is, yeah, obviously to the right here is the non-burned and the burned. So more of the entire expanse. Some of those little elements didn't burn, but they must not have had the fuel to catch. So that's okay. Let's see. This is the black, of course, which we did already touch on. It is deemed safe to walk through with your fire regulation boots. Um, so this is the black, the safe zone. The fuel has already been burned. So there's very much less to ignite. This is the woodland area, a woodland prescribed burn. So we've got, this was actually a hill also. So this is the base of the hill, and then it went up and through. It's very haunting. It can be beautiful. But remember, this is a prescribed burn, and so this was meant to happen. If it's out of hand, it does pose much more of a hazard. So then calling it beautiful might be respectful, but of the power of fire, but it can also be tempestuous and dangerous too. So you'd want to acknowledge that with adjectives also. But this here is the line on this one. I believe this is the first. I actually don't recall, but um, exactly now that I'm looking at this. But perhaps this is the first line of where the fire started, or maybe we burned the side first, put a little black on the edges, just so that to affirm because there was no hard line, and it's a hill with trees, so we couldn't get the four-wheeler with the water to do a wet line on this. So we did just rake it and get the fuel out of the way, and we had our flappers and on the side to put out. So I think that is what we did actually. I think we did put black along the perimeter first as the buffer zone, as the safety zone. So that's actually a good note, and I should put that on the presentation, on that slide. But um, and this is just to show some fallen logs that did ignite, and the juxtaposition of the living tree here in this center. It was tagged, I think, for oak wilt, observation and experimentation. But also, we've got just the fallen detritus there too. So that is the woodland prescribed burn. And we already kind of touched on this, the water truck, quote unquote, our four-wheeler here. It is a great way to maneuver on tougher, tighter landscapes. If you have something that's a little smaller and built for the terrain, and the four-wheelers are good at that. We also had just a regular truck, and we had another truck too that had a really, really big water tank also. So there was also a pond nearby. So if we needed to use a pump to get water out of that pond, we could have done that also. So here are a few videos. I will escape so we can get on a full screen there. And full screen. I'm gonna start that one over just because my computer took a minute to buffer here. So this was the hillside, the fire prescribed burn on the hillside. I think it was 8 acres, and it was there. Here we've got another video here. Just another short little thing. But these areas, you see, there is a specific point source of a quote unquote smoke. That's
gonna be a great year. What's the worst that can
apologies. But there was a distinctive source of the smoke, and so that would be what we would go back and um, try to put out. So there was one more video. Yeah, I guess you can kind of see it here too. Just one particular spot right in the front there, and another one off to the right, aside from that central one, which is below the red line. I don't know if you're seeing that on the screen, but a lot of smoke. And then we have this video. This one is kind of a spot the smoke in this. Do you see? I think it's off to the right side. But this was the pond that the oh yes, it's right up here. A little one on the right. Spot the smokes. But you've got the pond there and the wildlife. That was just, I think, a lunch break directly after the prescribed burn.
Me, myself, does everything on this list, all 10 of them.
Oh,
So this list is fascinating for me to see because they're
apologies. Yeah, but I think that video was actually taken on the lunch break of that day that the prescribed burn took place. So um, the nature obviously was active and engaged in that environment still, and things had kind of almost returned to normal to a certain extent with those bugs that were chirping by that pond. So there were a few smokes, obviously, and of course there was, you know, we did not see any wildlife that would have been endangered with that smoke, with the fires also. So, and that's another thing to take into consideration when you're checking the site and prepping, just to, you know, make sure that there isn't any wildlife there that could get trapped in any fire burned areas. But a lot of the animals can get pretty skittish, and if there are a lot of people around, they might make themselves scarce naturally too. So otherwise, are there any questions?